Okay, welcome to the second class of the book of Mishlei, the book of Proverbs. We are continuing this evening with verse number 4. We're going to bring it up on the screen. There's some very, very interesting verses that we have to do with you tonight. All right, let's just make sure we have it. And putting it up on the screen right now. Okay. So let's go right ahead to number 4. Okay, number 4, verse number 4. Latet lifto'oim orma linar dat umizima. What is the purpose of the book of Mishlei, the book of Proverbs? One of them is to endow the simple with shrewdness and the young with knowledge and foresight. All right, so firstly, let's talk about those couple of components here. We're talking about that we want fools, people who are generally have foolish tendencies, to be more clever, to act in a way that they can get through life in a more meticulous way. They need to be a bit shrewd, right, to get around. Otherwise, we get walked on in life. And then we talk about the young people. We want to endow the young with knowledge and foresight. Why do we single out young people? We can understand why we might single out people who are foolish. I mean, that's a trait that can apply to any age. But why do we single out the young people? It's a very, very important question. So the answer is our tradition understood that young people tend to act without knowledge, without forethought. And we want to give the youth understanding and thoughtfulness. Now, it's interesting because the Talmud records an interaction between Alexander the Great and the sages of the Negev. And there were 10 questions that he asked them. One of them was to define wisdom. What is wisdom? Tell me what wisdom is, okay? So the Talmud answers, this is in Tractate Tamid, it answers, Amru le, Ezehu chacham, who is wise? Haroeh et hanolad, who is wise? Someone who sees what will be in the future. In other words, that before one engages in any action, in any activity, he or she must think about what are the future ramifications of that particular action. Now, it's interesting. A few weeks ago, I was talking to an ambulance driver, and he was telling me that he had an emergency, and he was going with his siren and his flashers, and a cyclist was riding in front of him and would not get out of the way. And he said he had a choice. He could either run down the cyclist, right? That was he was tempted to do, but what would happen then? What's the consequence of that? The ambulance driver goes from a potential hero to a villain. It's going to be a bad. He could be a good guy. Now he's going to be a bad guy. He's going to run this guy over. He was tempted to. The cyclist was doing a very selfish, foolish thing, right? He was riding in front of an ambulance, something that a story that if you live in New York City is a very credible story. You see such things, unfortunately. So he chose to wait another minute. What can he do? You know, it was a tough question he had. He was in a tough predicament. So that's what it is. That's what it's talking about. You know, you had this fellow who's in the news, George Santos. Familiar with him? He pretended to be Jewish to win an election. But there was no forethought there, because now he's a laughing stock everywhere. People want him to resign, etc. So he said, hey, you know what? I'm going to win an election and everything is going to fall into play after I tell all these lies. But that's not what happened. It's not what happened. Now he has a lot of problems. He won the election under false pretenses. He has a lot of problems. So forethought is one of the most important components of this book, what it's going to try to teach us, to think about the consequences of our actions. Everything we do matters either in a positive way or, unfortunately, also in a negative way. All right, let's do the next verse. Number 5, Yishma Chacham v'Yosef lekach v'navon tach bulot yikneh. The wise man, hearing them, will gain more wisdom. The discerning man will learn to be adroit. So let's examine that for a moment. What are we talking about? We're talking about the intelligent person will listen and learn more. That's what it's telling us. We were given 2 ears and 1 mouth. Why? 2 ears to emphasize that we need to do more listening than speaking. We gain a lot more by listening than speaking. Take it from a guy who has to speak quite often, have no choice. But listening is a trait which we must give priority to. All right, that's very, very important. And then it goes on to say the discerning man will learn to be adroit. In other words, what it's saying here is when you listen, you'll gain wisdom. And when you gain wisdom, you'll gain discernment. You'll be able to have good judgment. And essentially, you will be skillful. You will be able to develop a strategy in how to navigate the challenges of life. That's what it's essentially saying, that one thing leads to another. Now, it's the hardest thing to do, to listen, especially listening, very, very challenging today, because we live in an era where everybody is a know-it-all. Everybody, you live in the Google era. You can just Google a concept and people think they know everything. That's not true. That's not true. If you're not familiar with the basic precepts of Judaism and all you're going to do is go to a website without knowing the context of the subject matter you're researching, it's not going to work out very well. All right. Websites don't necessarily give insights. We need insight. And this book is designed to give us insight. You get insight when you listen to someone who's very familiar with the subject matter, and when you're able to discuss it with that person. You know, he uses the word here, yikneh, right, to acquire. One is supposed to acquire a friend. One is supposed to acquire a chevrutah, someone who he or she can discuss Torah study with, right? We're supposed to bounce ideas off each other. That's one of the concepts of listening and being able to develop a strategy. It's not just what I know everything and I'm great. And it's not about that. It's a lot of it's about interaction. A lot of it is about delving into, as we say, hafachba v'hafachba, delving into the Torah and, gaining insight into its important concepts. So that's something which is very, very important for us to understand. It's something very, very hard to do, but listening is something which is very, very important. Then we go to number 6, tells us a very, very interesting thing here. Lahavin mashal umlitsa divrei chachamim v'chidotam. For understanding proverb and epigram, the words of the wise and their riddles. Okay, so a very interesting thought, and I'm going to tell you what that is essentially discussing. What it's saying is that grasping the superficial and apparent is considered by many to be sufficient knowledge, but not in Judaism. Just by looking at something, by looking at words in a book, that's not enough. Not everything can be stated in simple words. That's what you have to understand. Medical and physical sciences have some very technical terms. You look at the law has very, very technical terms. You look at the Constitution, philosophy has very technical terms. So since the book directs itself to the wise, right? This book that we're reading, Mishlei, Proverbs, directs itself to the wise as well as to the simple. Some are more sophisticated thoughts, and they're going to be expressed in figures and abstractions. And then you're going to have riddles, dark sayings, what's a riddle, by the way? A riddle is something you have to figure out. It asks a question without necessarily giving you an answer. And that's what you have a lot in this book. For example, this is a good riddle for you because now we're going into the month of February, right? So how many days in a month? How many days in a month? Answer, 28 days in every single month. But most months have more than 28 days. But in every single month, you will have 28 days. So if I were to ask you how many days in a month, the answer is 28, and most months have more. The other thing is, another riddle for you. What is something that you can catch, but you cannot throw? You can catch it, but you can't throw it. All right. What is that? Answer, COVID. Can catch COVID, but you can't throw COVID, right? Or you can say the same about a cold. You can say that about a flu, right? We can catch a flu, but we can't throw a flu. All right. It's not like a ball. So those are riddles, and these are the methods in which the book of Mishlei is going to present all of the various different important principles that it has to offer. So I thank you very, very much for listening and look forward to next week again. Thank you.